Welcome to Get Decked EDH, guys. Today I have an interesting video. I put together a diagram on how I build my decks. More specifically, I made a system in which you can relate to if you're ever struggling with building a deck or want maybe more knowledge on how to construct one yourself. Because I feel like deck building is really important and it helps you become a better player the more you can understand how your deck operates. So I'm going to cover 5 pillars that I think are really important when building a deck and how I approach them and which order I approach them. Obviously this isn't super strict, you can bounce to whatever is more comfortable for you, but beyond that, let's dive into it. Alright, so normally pillars are supporting something, and in this instance it's supporting our general theme. So with this little diagram or little visual example, I'm going to kind of go over what this means and why I take these steps in these orders. So first, when I build a deck, I start with a theme. Now the theme could be its color identity, the general idea or goal of the deck, and then I'll kind of go from there and narrow it down. So after I get the general idea, I'll go into the archetype that I'm trying to pinpoint for this deck. And then I'll get to go look through my commanders after I decide what kind of archetype I'm looking for. That way it's a cascading effect and I get to really pinpoint what I want to work with. And now this is important because this is going to be supported by our 5-pillar system to deck building. So now that we know what the roof looks like, what's supporting it? So these are the 5 pillars that I have constructed and put together, and this is definitely organized in a way. So keep with me and bear with me. Don't get overwhelmed by all the text you see. We're going to break it down piece by piece. So starting from left to right, that is the order that I generally tackle. So lands and ramp would be first, and it's also important that you'll notice that there's words on the top and then words on the bottom. And so I essentially will put the words on top at a higher level of importance when building a deck compared to the bottom. And that doesn't mean the bottom isn't important or that it's not more important than the ones coming after it. It's just how I generally tackle a deck building process. And I wanted to organize it in a way that you guys could relate to and come back to and kind of see the example. So first I want to start with lands and ramp. This is the first step I generally take when building a deck. So obviously your land base is important and you want to get that constructed. Usually I do it prior so that way I'm not stressing about it later and I can kind of focus on filling out the deck without worrying about plugging in lands and taking out cards. And then after I do lands, I generally will move down to ramp because ramp is extremely important and it's going to provide me with more ways to get to the next steps that I'm going to cover. And then so number 2, I want to talk about payoffs and win cons. Now generally I'll do my payoffs first in the deck, and that includes just ways I'm going to be dealing damage, any big game moves that are going to propel me forward, potentially making me more of a threat. And then after I kind of slot those in, because that's essentially what the deck is going to be based around, is this pillar right here. This is where most people get excited when they see certain cards and they want to start building around them. Win cons is more like this card is going to win. And that could be either win more cards, that could be anything between a card that actually says you win the game if you reach a certain point. I will generally put that in after payoffs because win cons are usually a smaller section of the deck. It's not the whole goal or the dedication, but it is a way that I plan on winning beyond payoffs. So now that we've covered 1 and 2, let's get to the heart, the middle pillar, which is value and card advantage. Now with value, I'm thinking more of my value engine, which is how is everything relating to this, and everything is going to be sifting through value in order to provide more. And I'm a big value player, so value is generally pretty important in my list. As you're going to see, we're going to move on to other things. But what I mean by value too is essentially propelling my board state forward aggressively. So I like to build exponential growth decks where one turn I'm not doing anything, then the next turn I'm popping off, aka setup style. So once I get my value engine kind of tuned in, I'll move on to card advantage because card advantage is extremely important and it's going to propel me forward in the game for the long run because I want to have a stable influx of cards. And also I want to mention, because this whole pillar system is going to be a precursor to a synergy video that I'm going to do, which is going to relate back to this pillar system, and then we can see how all of these intersect through synergy, which will be a whole nother topic, hence why it's going to be a separate video. But back to the middle pillar, card advantage. that's going to usually flow through all these other pillars. And it's also important that card advantage can look different based on what kind of deck, theme, or archetype you are building. So that could be card draw, exile. You might not even want to draw cards. You might want to be pitching them to your yard. It all depends on what kind of theme you're running. So value first, card advantage next. That's generally what I cross off my list when I'm building a deck. Now we're going to move on to pillar number 4. Now on top I put utility. What I mean by utility is generally things that are going to be increasing my value output or helping to repeat the process of value that I've accumulated on my board. So utilities like untapping permanents or promoting the general theme of my deck, anything within that realm. Now, why utility is related to recursion is because I view recursion as a step lower than utility, and generally, depending on what kind of deck I'm building, recursion could be very minimal compared to, the whole deck is based on reanimating. So I usually will slot recursion pretty low on my list, but generally every deck I have has some type of recursion because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what deck you're going to play against. So it's important that you have a backup plan in case stuff gets removed, milled, or discarded. Any other way, doesn't matter. Recursion does have its place, but it's not extremely important on how I deck build because I like to build an engine that is going to propel me forward rapidly. So therefore recursion, I don't have time for that. I have time to move forward, but still it's important. And then moving on to our final pillar, I want to talk about prevention and removal. Now, when I build a deck, I will generally put prevention and removal last. And what I mean by prevention is like counter spells, protection spells, anyways, like heroic intervention. Think of stuff like that for prevention. And I don't want people to be messing with my board, so I view prevention as more important since, like I said, I'm a value first kind of guy. So I like to ramp my board state. So usually I like protection over removal because my whole goal is to steamroll my opponents before they have a chance to build themselves up past me. Then we get to removal, which I generally slot in last, and that will fill in any gaps. And I will learn more through play testing and deck testing how much removal I'll need, especially when I get to bring the deck into some multiplayer pods and I see how it holds up and how much I need to rely on preventing my opponents from moving forward in order to keep myself ahead of the game. That wraps up at least the brief descriptions of all these pillars. And like I said earlier, I'm going to be making a synergy video, which is going to connect all these together. And I'm going to go into bigger detail on how they interact and how they can interact, which is going to be fun. And I'm excited to work on that. I think this will be useful for you guys because it's definitely at least something you can hold on to. And I'm also going to be uploading this image itself underneath my description in the video. So if you wanted to go back and check on this without having to open the video, feel free to. It's your resource, use it as you will. Now, I wanted to make this as quick and efficient as possible and just give you guys this information that you can use with at your own leisure. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do me a huge favor, like and subscribe, because I'm going to be working on that synergy video next, which will kind of connect to this and hopefully be a good little completion to how you guys build your decks, because I think this is important. And whether you're new or experienced deck builder, this information can still be useful and it's always good to fall back on. So hopefully you found this video interesting. Other than that, take care and have a wonderful week.